Hello, everyone.
Happy New
Welcome.
Year.
Happy New Year indeed. Happy 2025. Geez,
Yeah.
it's going fast. It's going fast. We are very excited to welcome you to this first webinar of 2025. We have some really good plan for the year, but beginning of the year, this is obviously a really wonderful time to talk about goals. So I'm going to
Yeah.
share my screen real quick and um, we will talk about, goodness, where is my sharing button? Here, slideshow. Let's get started. It's beginning of the year, we're still a little bit rusty. It's a little bit recovering from the holidays. So today we are here to talk about the science behind goal settings and why it works. It's actually quite interesting, and we will go through some of those details. Our work today is we're going to spend a minute talking about who we are at Talent Career Coaching, and then we will dive deep into why goal setting works, a little bit of the neuroscience. If you've joined us for some of those webinars, you know we are some kind of nerds and we love the neuroscience behind things. We will talk about how to set goals, which is probably what you're really interested in, and we will dive into the SMART framework. And then we will have time for Q&A. Please put your questions in the chat. We have Brandy who will monitor the chat or the Q&A, so we can really address some of those questions you have. And then we'll talk about our infamous special offer. Let's start with talking about ourselves. Ruthie, maybe you can get started on this new year.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Ruthie. I'm one of the coaches on the team at Talent, and my passion is really helping people who are feeling lost and confused about their next step develop confidence and clarity as they're moving forward. And so that's my focus. And I really strongly believe that helping people connect with work that's aligned with their values and helping them connect with work that's fulfilling is one way that we can make the world a better place, because we send ripple effects out with our satisfaction through our work. Back to you.
Spreading the love. Beautiful. So I'm Tatiana. I'm also one of the coaches at Talent Career Coaching. My specialty is more on the leadership side of things and helping people be as effective as leaders as possible. And I like to talk about how we lead teams, how we lead work, and also how we lead ourselves, and helping people be the better version of themselves, or the version of themselves they want to be. And at Career itself, Talent Career Coaching, we really work with people, we're go-getters who want to reimagine their careers, and really this important notion of we spend so much time at work, might as well love what we do, and then also getting paid, and getting paid what we are worth, which is a big conversation always. And we serve people around the US and Canada. We have many services, one-on-one team coaching, and we go through the whole gamut of the career stages. And then we will do education, encouragement, partnership, and really help you get to where you want to go with your career. So without further ado, maybe we can dive into the meat of what we are talking today, Ruthie. And I mean, this is not a big surprise. Beginning of the year, so many of us are going to spend time creating goals and resolution, I guess.
Yeah.
And so, why is it important to set goals? Will you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, totally. So I read somewhere recently, something like 20% of people were a week into the new year. And by this point, 20% of people have already ditched the New Year's resolution that they set, right? So New Year's resolutions tend to fail. Goals when done effectively, don't. And one of the reasons why it's important to set goals is it helps you align your focus on the things that matter to you. It gives you increased clarity about what it is that you want to do next and how to move forward. And one of the things that I like to think about, I think a lot about positive mindset and how we can tap into a positive mindset to help with job hunting. Setting effective goals and setting small goals that we can accomplish along the way gives us momentum so that we can celebrate and keep up our energy as we're working towards bigger goals. And one of the things that I like to talk to people about too is this idea. It comes from the book You're a Badass. And if setting goals gives parameters so that you are asking life to serve up what you want to create, right? So the more specific you can be, the more likely it is that that thing is going to come to fruition. It's like going into a sandwich shop and saying, I want a sandwich. And you don't know exactly what you're going to get. But if you go into a sandwich shop and you say, I want, wheat bread, I want these condiments, I want a roasted veggie sandwich with this type of cheese, you're going to get exactly what it is that you want to create. And that's how we want to think about goal setting.
I love
And
that
then one
analogy
other,
too. Oh,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Oh,
No, it
just
was
like
just your
you
turn.
go. Okay, I'll say that when we're thinking about asking the universe for what you want, another important element of that is setting goals that are truly aligned with your intrinsic values, your interests, your desires. Those are called self-concordant goals. And those contrast with goals that we set and goals that we pursue for external reasons, right? Like when you were a kid, you got good grades because your parents told you you had to. That is an example of a goal set because of external pressure, or feeling like you have to go after a higher paying job because you're feeling this societal pressure to do that. That type of goal leads to stress, it leads to burnout, right? If we're focused on setting self-concordant goals, those are things where you're really excited about them. There's higher intrinsic motivation, which means you're going to be more persistent if you face a challenge. Overall, there's more likelihood that you'll achieve your goals. And when you do it, you're going to feel more authentic and just a higher level of accomplishment and satisfaction. So that's another important element, right? It's like not just are you setting goals, but are those goals in alignment with who you are authentically and helping you come into alignment with that. Back to you.
Thank you. Well, what I was gonna say is I really love the analogy of the sandwich, where you end up really truly ordering something that makes sense to you. And if I were to try to stretch that analogy with the self-concordant aspect of it, is really ordering your sandwich with whatever filling really you like versus ordering a sandwich with, I don't know, sawdust in it because sawdust is healthy and turns out to be gross. So that notion of really trying to be aligned with your set of values and also where you want to go is so important. You said something that part of what I wanted to address today is asking the universe, again with the sandwich analogy, asking for what you truly want. Yeah. And then there is also this debate that there's a lot of conversations out there, like with, okay, but asking the universe or setting goals, manifesting this word. And some people might cringe at the idea of manifesting, right? It might sound really woo-woo. And the beauty of it is it doesn't have to be, because there is a lot of neuroscience behind this notion of manifesting, where when we set up goals, we rewire the brain. So as a species, we are simple. We are complex, but we love simplicity, or at least our brain loves efficiency, and so our brain will go for simplicity, for categorization. That's a hard word to say, categorization and prioritization. And so this notion of having very clear goals helps us get there. So we are basically serving something on a platter for our brain to say, okay, simple, this is a goal, this is what's important for me. So please turn your attention towards it and turn your focus towards it. And that clarity really helps rewire the brain and then helps us redirecting towards that particular element. It's called value tagging, right? Mm-hmm. Again, the brain says, ooh, this is somewhere written, so it's important, so this has value, so I'm going to go after it.
Yeah.
And so we are helping ourselves by creating those goals. Where we if we think about ways to create goals, what are some things you know and you've experienced around being effective at that creation of goals?
Yeah, so I know that like the one of the most important things is actually like what you were just saying, like when you pinpoint a goal and you focus your brain on that, it's gonna start to direct energy towards finding that thing, right? So there is science that demonstrates that writing down goals is actually really effective. And there's one study it took a survey of the population, and it was like 83% of people who are, sharing, who responded to the survey didn't actually have any goals in mind, right? 14% of the people had plans, but they hadn't actually written anything down, right? They had these vague things that they were working towards, which is me a lot of the time, admittedly. And then only 3% of the people had actually written down their goals. And taking time to write your goals down forces you to, like, you're sitting down, you're like, all right, I'm doing this, I'm defining them, I'm articulating what I'm working towards. It's that in and of itself is increasing your sense of commitment. It's making it more concrete. And there's a study out there. It's a pretty small group of participants. It was like 270 people, but this is a noteworthy study that shows that the people who wrote their goals down were 42% more likely to achieve them. And then the next level is tell someone about it, right? So, hey, Tati, I just wrote this goal down and this is what I'm working on this year, right? And that the saying it out loud adds that additional layer of accountability.
It seems like it's twofold when I listen to you. It's not only the kinetic aspect of writing, right? We will create some neural pathways. So many of us will remember something much better if we write it down. So there is something, and then there is also what I'm hearing is the fact that we will sit down and spend time to really articulate clearly, because we can write a novel about our goals, but it's probably more effective to write something smaller, and just spending time for that clarity will help also go in that direction.
Yeah, exactly. The simple act of being like, okay, I'm going to set goals for 2025 already. You've taken yourself, out of that, like, this year I want to work on getting that certification. I should look into that, these sort of things that are swirling around in our head. And we're actually like, okay, I'm taking an hour today to sit down and think of some goals, or even 15 minutes, right? It doesn't have to be a big chunk of time just to get the ball rolling. That's a huge step.
The dedicated time.
Yeah.
Now, experience tells me that there are many ways to do the dishes, and there are many ways to create goals.
Yeah.
And so, what are or is your favorite way to do it that is effective that you want to
Yeah.
share?
So I'm going to talk about the SMART framework. And this is something that I feel like I learned in school. It's something that has always sort of floated around in my universe. And I understood the concept, but admittedly, for years, I know that this is an effective way to do it, and I wasn't actually doing it. And I, I don't know about you, but I think it's like that the like the work that it takes to actually sit down and like define your goals, all this stuff we're saying like, oh, just do it. It's challenging, it's difficult. And so what I like about the SMART framework is that it gives you a step by step, how are you going to actually articulate this goal? So SMART, and I think Brandy, if you can link we have a little worksheet that will be helpful. Excuse me. SMART is an acronym that stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound. Okay. And I'm going to walk through each of those steps using an example that I set for myself last year. This was a SMART goal of last year. And then I was going to say, if someone in the audience, if there's someone who's thinking about, oh, here's a goal that I'm kind of thinking through, at the end of this, we can actually take some time to work on that together.
I was just going to ask, because SMART has been around for a very long time, and I'm just curious in our audience if people have heard about SMART goal and use them, and your prompt of asking if people have a goal we can discuss later is great.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely chime in the chat. If this is something you've used before or you're familiar with it, I would love to hear people's experience if it's been an effective resource. Okay, so goal from last year, 2024 goal of mine, professional goal, was to expand my professional network. And I am someone who really has gained a ton of professional and personal value from making more connections professionally. And so this is something I wanted to continue doing. So expand my professional network is sort of this vague overarching goal. What I did, and the SMART goal I turned it into, I'll start with that, and then I'm going to walk through step by step each piece of that. So I said, by the end of Q1, I will connect with at least 50 professionals in my industry on LinkedIn by sending 5 personalized connection requests each week. Okay. So by the end of Q1, I will connect with at least 50 professionals by sending 5 personalized connection requests each week. So step 1, specific, right? Instead of expand my network, I am going to start by clearly defining what it is I want to accomplish, who's going to be involved, and the steps that are the steps I have to take to achieve it, to help you know where to start, right? So my specific element was focus on connecting with professionals in my industry by reaching out on LinkedIn. There's lots of ways to expand your network. My tool of choice was to use LinkedIn. Okay. I could expand my network by meeting neighbors in my neighborhood, or, there's so many different ways you could do that. My focus was getting to know other coaches, people in my industry, to learn from them. Okay. M of SMART is measurable. This is how you know that you're making progress towards your goal. You want to be able to track your progress to know when you've met your goal, right? You need to be able to check it off. What's the result going to be? So in this case, it's usually a number, not always. I think you had a good point, Tati, that it can also be sort of the quality of feedback that you receive, or sort of a percentage increase, or a general perception that something is better. It doesn't always have to be a hard and fast number. In this case,
number is just easier to grasp usually.
Right. We can check the box off a lot easier if we're like, okay, great, I hit my 50 new connections, which was my goal. A of SMART stands for attainable. In some cases, some people switch that out for achievable, attainable or achievable. So this is where you're evaluating whether there's anything holding you back from achieving your goal. And this is a super important element. This is the part where you're managing expectations. Okay. When we're thinking about goals and how we continue to work towards our goals, it's being honest with yourself about what you have the capacity to do. It's reducing pressure that you're putting on yourself if you're busy and you've got too much going on. This is where we understand that the goals that we set need to fluctuate in alignment with what's happening in our life. If something's not realistic for us, it's going to hurt our momentum. It's going to make us feel bad for not accomplishing the goal. And then it's sort of like this negative spiral. So we want to be proactive and say, okay, what do I have going on right now? I'm setting this goal. When can I work on this? Am I biting off more than I can chew? And we want to make it more likely that you will achieve the goal by evaluating this step. Relevant is the R from SMART, and that is where you're double checking that the goal is in alignment, right? You might be setting a personal goal. It could be, obviously we're career coaches, so we think a lot about career development and how that aligns with people's personal visions. But this could be a departmental goal, right? It could be something that you're working on with your manager at work. How is this in alignment with whatever it is that you're working towards, right? Is this particular goal bringing you towards that? So that's what you want to consider. And for me, that overarching goal of expanding my network by focusing in on making connections on LinkedIn, I was like, yes, this is in fact relevant and working towards that goal. And then the final piece of the SMART acronym is time bound or timely. And that is that you are giving yourself a deadline. Put an actual date on it, right? This goes back to, can you check off the fact that you accomplished this goal, right? It helps you stay focused. It helps you stay motivated. It gives you something to work towards. And we want to know, when is this thing going to be done, right? And you had a really great point too, Tati, that it's also, you can set a reminder for yourself. For me, I said by the end of Q1, so I had 90 days to work towards my goal. I could have set a reminder at the halfway mark on my calendar to just be like, hey, how's it going towards this goal that you're working on? And that step to evaluate helps you make progress towards what you're working on.
It's this notion of we would do for employees. If you are a leader who has employees, you would tend to go back. I mean, ideally, you go back and ask, how are things going on project XYZ? It's the same. It's managing ourselves, managing our goals a little bit like a project, and double checking. So, would you be able to share with the audience something that you would consider a little bit more of a weak goal versus a stronger goal? Or maybe let's check in if we have in the audience somebody who does have a goal they would like to review with us.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, just checking the Q&A. Brandy, do you have anything on your end?
Nothing on my end just yet. We've got a couple people on, it looks like through phone, so I know sometimes that can be a challenge.
It can be a little bit more difficult, yeah.
So one example, let's just throw out the idea of informational interviews, right? Because this is a plug for our webinar that's coming next month, where we're going to talk about informational interviews and how to do that effectively. So give me an example, Tati, of just having sort of like a vague goal around informational interviews.
Well, I want to have more informational interviews. That's my goal. I want more informational interviews.
Okay, so more informational interviews. So let's walk through this step. Let's actually go through the SMART framework. So you want to have more informational interviews. Let's get more specific. Who, with who, what type? Tell me a bit more.
Okay, so I would like to have more informational interviews with change management leaders. I'm very interested in change management. It's actually a little passion of mine. Okay. So that's what I would like.
Very cool. Okay, that is we just dialed right into a very specific role, and that's what you're more interested in learning more about. You're going to target informational interviews with change management leaders, right? Because you also are focused on leadership and managers and all of that stuff. So that makes a lot of sense. Okay, we're moving to M. So this is measurable. So give me some numbers here. How will you know that you can check this off? What what number of informational interviews?
Well, I think in my head, I'm like, my overachieving person is 10. But now I'm remembering the A, so I'm jumping ahead. And maybe three. Maybe three is achievable and measurable.
Okay, great. I love that you were using kind of both of those pieces of the framework in conjunction. So you were measuring, but then you kind of reeled it back in saying, okay, based on what I know, I'm going to keep it to something smaller, to 3, which is a manageable number. So we just checked off that M and A because you were evaluating what you could realistically accomplish. So let's move to the R, which is relevant. How does this align with your kind of overall goals that you're working towards?
Yes, so this is relevant in my work around transition and working with people that are transitioning jobs, but also life transitions. So that seems in alignment. At least there is a shortcut in my brain that makes it in alignment.
Okay, cool. So feels like a concordant goal. You're like, yep, this is something I'm interested in working towards. Awesome. And then the last step is to give yourself a deadline. So I will say that like as you're, moving, it's not necessarily linear that you're moving through this like in a row like that, because setting your deadline might help you kind of evaluate the measurable step also. But you said you're going to do 3 informational interviews with change management leaders. What's a realistic deadline?
Yeah. And I realized I actually had not thought about it, but I did the time bound in concordance with the attainable and the measurable, not realizing it. Because in my head, I want this to be done in the next 3 months.
3
So
months. Okay.
10 in the next 3 months doesn't seem attainable.
Okay.
However, 3 in the next 3 months is.
Okay.
So I like this idea of being, instead of being linear, it's a little bit more like a cogs working with one another.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so in the next 3 months, you are going to schedule 3 informational interviews with change management leaders.
Yeah.
Nice. How's that feel?
Amazing. Thank you for doing my work for me. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. So this is something, it's like this step, like we just went through that, probably took us 4 or 5 minutes to go through Tati's goal and break it down to be a more effective goal. So it doesn't have to be an overwhelming task, right? It's more about just taking the time to actually do the thing. Yeah.
I will say this notion of overwhelming. I have experience setting goals that were big, that were chunky, and the moment I would read them, I would have like a little bit heart palpitation. So I really like this idea of when we have that reaction of being like, oh my God, this is so much, to notice it and to get that as a trigger or a reminder to actually potentially chunk that goal in pieces.
Yeah.
Versus going big, which we are always tempted to do because that's how our world is about, more and achieve more.
Yeah.
So a quick time check. We have a couple more minutes. So there is a story, Ruthie, that you shared with me that I love so much that I really would love it. Before we go deep in the Q&A, I really would love you to share. And it's the story about your vision boarding.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Do you mind sharing?
Sure, yeah. So when I think about goals, and my favorite way to kind of consider and reflect on my goals for the year and create a visual of what I'm working towards is by making a vision board. And yeah, so and Tati, I think you can talk, more about the science of this, so I'll let you nerd out on that in just a second. But one thing I noticed, my partner and I are planning a trip. We're going to go to Southeast Asia, and it's a big, exciting thing that we've been thinking about for several years, but haven't had the time and space to do this. So we're finally able to take this amazing trip that's coming up. And I was looking, I have, a big vision board. I should share a picture, but it's basically like behind my computer right here. I have this vision board. So as I'm working throughout the day, I'm just kind of glancing up and, thinking my thoughts and looking up at this thing. And I noticed this like tiny, it's like about this big, this little clipping that at that point we had only purchased one-way tickets to Bangkok, and just like right up in the corner of my vision board that I hadn't even really noticed is like this little thing that's just like Bangkok. And I was like, whoa, okay, awesome. Like this thing's finally coming into alignment. And here it's been all along, just kind of like right there over my head. So that was just a very, amazing little realization about this like background power of vision boarding. So tell me more. You know more about the science.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
I love that you talked about the nerdiness of this. This is such a beautiful example of how our brain works. And I mean, I'm going to give the words, but we should probably not spend too much time remembering this, but it is called reticular activation system. So basically, by looking even unconsciously at this board and the word Bangkok and what's around it, you continually see images that are aligned with that goal. And what happens is then that reticular activating system prompts you to really notice opportunities to and resources to go towards that goal. So it's very likely that when you were about to take your one-way ticket and you had an opportunity to choose Bangkok or any other city in Southeast Asia, you were predisposed to go towards Bangkok. And so it's a little bit chicken or the egg, but it's there. It's our brain at work, and it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful, and I'm very excited and maybe a tad bit envious about your upcoming trip.
Yeah, I like that, because I think that the act of going through, like, I didn't set a SMART goal around going to Southeast Asia, right? This was just sort of one of those nebulous things we'd been talking about for a long time. And so I like that there are different ways to accomplish this. The SMART format is very tangible. It helps you, check the things off, but some of those bigger kind of life things that you would love to happen sometime in the future, vision boarding is amazing for that, because it just kind of helps you piece it together and think about what it is that you're focusing in on. So that's why I'm so called to that.
Beautiful. So we do have a question from the audience. So maybe that's an opportunity to shift towards answering some of those questions.
Yeah.
And this person is asking, I would like to be a more effective communicator. Can you use the SMART goal for this? So do you want to take this one?
Sure, yeah. Like, we can work through this one together just the same way we did with your goal of informational interviews. So I would like to be a more effective communicator is a very broad idea, right? And there's lots of different ways that someone could become a more effective communicator. So my first reaction here is to say, with what, right? Like, we got to get specific, right? Are you trying to be a more effective? And it could be that you have this overarching goal of effective communication, and you might set 4 or 5 different SMART goals, all related to effective communication. But by breaking them down into smaller chunks, like you were saying, Tati, you're making it more likely that you're going to actually accomplish those things. So first, I would get specific. Is this effective communication with your spouse? Is this more effective communication at work? Like, are you having challenges with your coworkers or your manager? Is this about getting better at setting boundaries? I know that that's a big thing that I've learned a lot about over the last several years, is like effectively communicating like what is and isn't okay with me. So that's sort of where I would start first. Maybe it's all of those things, and you're going to create a SMART goal for each of those different areas, right? Again, the other thing that comes to mind is that there's a lot of different ways to learn effective communication. You might want to watch YouTube videos about tips and tricks to be an effective communicator. maybe you're going to enroll in a course that's about becoming a better writer, right? If you want to be like an effective written communicator, you could choose something like that. I don't know. What are some other ideas that come to your mind, Tati, of different ways someone could become more effective with communication?
Absolutely. I think maybe if the person who wrote that question actually has a more specific goal, if you don't mind sharing it while I answer your question, Ruthie. I think it has to do a lot with, depending, are you looking for interpersonal communication, or are you looking more presentation, showing up in front of a board, more like of a performative communication versus interpersonal communication. So I think that is a really good start. Is communication is everywhere. Written communication, beautiful. So that gives us a little bit more of that specificity in written communication. So we have the S. We have I would tend to probably ask questions, and that's when having a partner in thinking through this can be super useful.
Yeah.
Is professional written communication. That would be the assumptions I'm making here. So we have the specificity, more or less.
Yeah. And just like spitballing some ideas here in the interest of time. I mean, this could be something like, I will download the Grammarly Chrome extension by the end of next week, right? I will research courses on Coursera or LinkedIn Learning related to effective professional written communication by the end of this month. And we'll make a decision about whether I'm going to commit to one of those, right?
Communication styles, to me, that's a big thing that comes to my mind is we all have different, well, there are some very specific communication styles out there or similarities, and so maybe it's worth learning about what's out there. Your communication style might be different than a possible recipient, so how do you learn how to speak their language, for example?
Yes, like direct or indirect communicators, for sure. Yeah,
for example.
that's a great thought. So yeah, I think one of the reasons, like, for sure you can move up and down that ladder of the acronym, it's pretty fluid there, but I do think that starting with the S and dialing it in to get as specific as possible is where it's gonna be more effective, right? Like what exactly, like which element of written communication, and then, breaking it down. Maybe it's 3 goals that come out of that one overarching thought, right? And then you're not getting bogged down being like, this is something I'm not really sure. I'm spinning my wheels. I don't know where to get started. You could even set yourself a goal that's like, I'm going to research this thing, right? Or I'm going to learn about different ways to hone my effective communication skills.
What is the pain point? What is the pain point? So for sake of time, we say written communication. So the full SMART goal would be, let's take taking a LinkedIn course for communication, just for the sake of going through the whole SMART thing.
Sure.
So we have the specificity of increasing improving effectiveness of written communication by taking a class on LinkedIn. What is the measurable aspect here?
I'm going to take one LinkedIn learning course on effective writing communication.
SMA, is this attainable?
Yes, for me, I think that this is something realistically I could block out, maybe a couple hours a week to dedicate towards that. So yes, in my schedule, like over the next couple months, it would be attainable.
Is this relevant?
Well, not for me in particular, but for this person that's working towards effective written communication, yes, it is.
And then time bound.
Yeah, so I'm going to set myself the goal. I like the Q1 goal, right? At the beginning of the year, by the end of Q1, I will have taken one LinkedIn learning course on effective written communication.
Thank you, Ruthie. I really hope this was helpful to go through it. We really had a beautiful example of how that specificity can be a little bit tricky in the beginning, and how having a thought partner and someone who helps you dig and really say, why is this important? Is there a pain point behind it? And really kind of make room for really the principle, the more important nugget out of that goal.
Yeah.
Can be. So we are coming to an end for this webinar. We are committed to make sure everybody has a chance to go back to their day work and lives on time. So as we I'm not going to be technically challenged today. That's my commitment. That's my goal. Okay. But I seem to still be. So bear with me. Okay. So I am going to share this. Coming up, we have done a couple of, we have talked a little bit about our opportunities at Talent Career Coaching. We really want to continue to have these webinars and talk about all of those elements that hopefully make career management a little bit easier. And the next one will be in February, where we are going to talk about mastering the art of informational interviews. I am not gonna lie, I don't like informational interviews. I cringe at them, and yet time and time and time again, I've seen how effective they are. And so we are going to talk about this with Brandy as our in-house expert, as well as in March. Then I've talked a little bit about the transition and the impact on everyday life. We will spend 45 minutes really looking at transitions and how to navigate them and honoring them. We have this beautiful workshop coming up Sunday. I think you still have some spots open, Ruthie.
Yeah, we're closing in on, we only have a few spots left, but I am running an in-person workshop for those folks who are in the Portland metro area. It's going to be at Talent's office space up in Vancouver. And yeah, this is going to be just a really great, it's a 3-hour workshop where you can really dial in and get thinking. We'll do some visualization. We'll consider different areas of your life and what you're hoping to manifest in those areas for 2025. So there's more information and registration information on our website.
Wonderful. And then finally, because we care about you and we appreciate your time, here is our special offer. You can scan the QR code. For participants of this webinar, you can receive a $100 savings on coaching sessions. This is so important. This is tough. This whole career management, leadership management can be real tough. And so you don't have to do it alone. And that's where coaches can be really, really helpful in narrowing on what you want to do and how you want to get there. So we have, oh, and I did one thing. I said I was not going to be technically challenged, and then I lied. Here is how you can reach us, which I think is also could be important for you. The website, talentcareercoaching.com, you have the email, and you can find us on social media at Talent Career Coaching. With this, this time I can stop sharing my screen. And with this, wishing you all a wonderful rest of your day and a happy beginning of the year.
Yeah, good luck with goal setting. Check back in with us and let us know how it goes. We'd love to hear.
Thank you, everyone, for being with us. Take care.
Bye.